There's a completely different relationship between sales and product at our company than I think what is normal,
Yeah.
where sales gives feedback to product often. And we expect that that feedback is taken and acted upon very quickly. So like a customer will request a feature, usually like 24 to 48 hours it's built. Seller will say, hey, like, can this be improved? Usually within a week or two, that will be built.
This is Sales Hacker, a podcast for modern sales professionals who are looking to create more pipeline and close more deals. In each episode, we explore the latest sales tips, tactics, and strategies from leading industry pros that will teach you how to capture and connect data, streamline workflows, and do mission-critical work smarter so you can create opportunities more efficiently and close deals more predictably.
So we're here with Kashish Gupta. You are, for the listeners who don't know, the co-founder and co-CEO of Hightouch, which, well, I don't know if I'm going to do the best job explaining what it is, Kashish. Maybe you should.
Yeah, very happy to. Hightouch is a very simple tool that gets data from any database into any SaaS tool. We actually partner with Outreach, and we're a pretty easy way to get data from your database into Outreach. So folks will get personalized information about their customers, like how many times that customer is logging in, what product they're clicking on the website, what time they recently logged in. And using that information in Outreach, they can personalize their outbound emails to their customers. So we want to get like any kind of personalizable information into your SaaS tools like Outreach so that your sales folks, or in some cases, marketing folks, can use that information. And we partner with all the different SaaS tools. So we partner with all the CRMs like Salesforce, all the different marketing tools, and all the different ad tools, even like Facebook, Google, TikTok, and Snapchat. So just a really easy way to move data around.
It's so cool. I was just telling Marcella, how cool would it be if like Outreach salespeople had an automated way to say like, oh, I saw you had this conversation in the forum on Sales Hacker, or maybe not even say anything about it, but to know that it happened. For the listeners, if you're listening, by the way, we don't share your information with Outreach unless it specifically says that we do on like an event or something. So if you're worried about that, don't be. But yeah, it's really cool. So the reason I was fascinated with Hightouch is because, you know, I'm not a founder, but I hear conversations about things like there was an age where the strategy for a startup was to own the data. Like you want to have the database, which is, you know, CRM. And then there are other like, you know, tech strategies where it's own the workflow, where so like own, you know, the place where the work gets done, because most people don't actually do a lot of work in Salesforce. It's just the place where, you know, information is kept. What I like about what you're building at Hightouch is it's like the strategy is own the gap between those two things.
Mm-hmm.
And like by using something like that, you make your investment in CRM and the workflow tools that you use more valuable, which is cool.
Yeah. The biggest thing for us is people should live where they want. So data people like living in the database. Sales folks like living in Salesforce and Outreach. We don't want to force anyone to like adopt a new UI that they don't like or they don't want to be in day to day. And so the name of the game is really like data accessibility. We call it data activation, just getting that data active in the hands of business users.
Was this a pain point that you had? Like, I'm always fascinated in origin stories for startups like this because it's so innovative. It's like, how did you see this gap? So where did it come from?
It's actually because both my co-founders were early employees at Segment, which is another platform that moves data around. And around in 2020, early 2020, we were doing some customer discovery and thinking about building a new communications platform. So we wanted to build one place where you can see all your customer comms, whether you talk to the customer on LinkedIn, email, Slack, like everywhere, all in one place. And we did a ton of customer discovery, and almost everyone we talked to was like, wow, that's super cool. But I don't even know my customer's information. I don't even know when they logged in. I don't even know if they have an account in my product, actually. And so they were saying, no, we just need the customer data first. And so we just kept iterating and iterating. And ultimately what we found was that people were leaving Segment. There are a lot of active customers of Segment churning that product in favor of Snowflake and BigQuery, their data warehouses. And they were actively saying, hey, my data lives in Snowflake or in BigQuery. It doesn't live in Segment. I want to use my database that works across my whole company for everyone and use that for sales and marketing. And so we were just a new gap exposed by this big cloud transformation where folks are moving to cloud data warehouses like Snowflake. And because of that, because it's the unified database for all teams, everyone wanted to use that new architecture.
So the original idea, the idea of like unified communications hub for
Mhm.
customer comms,
Yeah,
well, you were like too far ahead of the game, basically.
a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it was actually just that we were solving the second most important problem in the company. People's first most important problem was, tell me how much usage my customer has and whether they're logging in.
That's so cool, man. Do you think there's a future where Hightouch grows to the point where you do get to the point of solving that communications use case by virtue of having solved the data connection and unification problem?
To be honest, there's so much more to do on the data space that it's going to take quite some time if we ever get.
Cool. Yeah,
So
stay
for
focused.
us, like the things that we think about are, how do we build better interfaces for example, marketers and sales folks to be able to operate on their data. So for example, you may not have a metric in your database that says like, tell me what product my customer is going to use next. But if you did, you could totally use that information to market or like email the customer about that and upsell them. So a really common thing people do with Hightouch is, what data can I use to intelligently upsell my customer? Can you tell me when I should reach out to them and what I should tell them about
Mm,
in order to upsell them? And so there's like all these different interfaces that require the help of data teams right now, but in the future might be totally self-serve to sales.
that
So
is amazing. I was this was actually one of the things I really wanted to ask you about. You have a degree in machine learning or AI, am I
uh-huh.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't, and you'll be able to tell in just a minute. I am in the middle of like 3 weeks into this. I've really gone down a rabbit hole on ChatGPT specifically and the sales use cases for it. I have consumed, I think, every single blog article and video and LinkedIn post about, quote unquote, how to use ChatGPT for sales.
Mhm.
And the more research I do, the more my conclusion becomes probably don't. Like, there are a couple specific things it can help you do if you're talking about something where like recency doesn't matter. There are a couple things that can help you do faster, but for the most part, like the things people want to use it for, like, oh, help me write this cold email, you probably shouldn't. What you just talked about, something that ChatGPT can't do, is using AI to like tell you when to take a specific
Mhm.
action or like when to look out for a customer. That's really cool. How else do you think machine learning or AI will shape, how reps interact with customers from here on
Yeah.
out?
I mean, for since ages, folks have been focused on human in the loop AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's still going to be the case. So do you really want your ChatGPT model to be talking to your customers directly? Or do you want it to generate some baseline text and then intelligent human beings edit that text for like actually reaching out to the customer? Right? Or vice versa, have it like generate a script, write a bunch of emails, but then still like some human being looks at those before they're sent off.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one. The other is like, how much does personalization really matter in the end of the day?
Mm.
There's like two
Yeah.
philosophies for outbound sales. One is volume and right time, right messaging.
Yeah.
The other is like personalize this for my customer, talk about sports, like all this other type of stuff. I think most people subscribe to like have good messaging, hit the person at the right time. And so like that's kind of how I take it from the sales angle. Now from the
Mm.
AI angle, this is where it can get pretty interesting. AI is only as good as the information you feed it. So it's actually still possible that we could feed that model more information about our customers. ChatGPT is not trained on your customer data. It's trained on the broader internet.
Yep.
But if I were to give it my customer data and say, hey, like, here's everything I know about my customers, take that as your context. Now, help me write some emails, help me think about timing. In fact, let me teach you about timing. Then you start teaching ChatGPT about timing, when to reach out to a customer versus not. And you
Yep.
tell them, hey, like, these events signify value for my customer. These events signify churn for my customer. If you build the right context, I think there's a chance that this actually works. So that's something that is pretty exciting to explore, but it's really not about the new developments in AI. The new developments in AI help us write the text faster.
Yeah.
Everything else I'm describing is like really simple statistics. And it
Yeah.
always has been. Like pretty much every statistician started calling themselves a machine learning engineer like a couple of years ago, because like the same thing that people in stats were doing for many years is now being called machine learning in a different way, right? Yeah, you have much more like guessing and like training so that the computer can think for itself. But in the end of the day, we can achieve a pretty similar outcome with the right inputs and good statistics.
You just blew
Just
my mind. And also you showed me that I was wrong, very wrong about that very recently. Like last week, my dad asked me, "Hey, what is the difference between machine learning?" He's retired, so he's just like passively interested in this. What's the
Yeah.
difference between machine learning and like statistics? And I totally got it
Yeah.
wrong.
And then, well, I will say one thing. So like, eventually you get into deep learning, then you get into transformers, which is how ChatGPT works.
Mhm.
And eventually it is pretty different from stats because you can no longer mathematically back out what it's doing. So like for ChatGPT, there's
Got
so
it.
many layers and like transformers in the model that no human, actually like, it's not even describable how it made a decision because it's trained on too many parameters. And so at that point, then it does really truly become like a computer that is guessing the next best thing to say.
That's fascinating. So the goal is to kind of create a black box,
I would say that is the
or is it
current
an
goal for
outcome?
companies like OpenAI. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the right goal.
Oh, interesting.
That is the direction they're moving in.
So I did a LinkedIn poll, and I
Yeah.
don't think I had statistical significance. By the way, there were like 79 respondents,
Wow.
but about half of salespeople said that they used ChatGPT in the last week to help them with their jobs. Do you
Wow.
use it or any other generative AI as an executive
So I personally don't, but we are starting to encourage folks to do that.
at
So
Hightouch?
yeah, so like I've seen tons of my friends use it in their engineering jobs where sometimes it's just faster to have ChatGPT write a function header and then you write like certain parts of it yourself. So
Yeah.
I don't know if actually the engineers at Hightouch are using that yet, but that is something we're considering encouraging them to do. And then the same is going to go for like our marketing team and our sales team. It's not going to be like a click the button, click publish, you're good. It's done.
No. Yeah,
It's
there's
more
not
like a
definitely not a
first draft
silver
sort of
bullet.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we do play around with it. I think it's probably going to become used more and more over time. And I
Yeah.
think different companies just have different amounts of like speed when they adopt it.
Mhm.
But like the cool thing is like as a manager, you may never know that your employees are using it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
could not tell you how much that's already being used or not.
Yeah. 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 The thing that I've found I like it for is giving me something to say no to. Like, it just helps me organize my thought. I almost never
Yeah.
use anything it gives me, really. I'm not even taking a draft and modifying it. I'm just, it
Yeah.
helps me narrow down my options. Here's another thing I really wanted to ask you about. You mentioned that your marketing and sales teams might start using ChatGPT. How do they use Hightouch internally at Hightouch?
Yeah. So we're actually like, you must have guessed it, like we're quite power users at Hightouch. So all of our onboarding emails are powered automatically by Hightouch. Our billing is even automated via Hightouch. Obviously, our CRM is powered by Hightouch, and our outreach emails are powered by Hightouch. So we are an outreach customer. We use it for like email automation, and almost every single SaaS tool we use in our business is powered by Hightouch, including Intercom, Outreach, Salesforce. And the cool thing is because we have users that use our product before they pay us, we want to see that for usage. We want to see like, all right, what tools is our customer trying to use? How many times they log in? How many users are in the workspace? What features did they try to click on and fail to set up? Like
Mm,
all that kind of stuff you want to see in your Intercom, in your Salesforce, in your outreach. That way, the business person sitting in those end tools can make a smart decision about, oh, this person tried to set up the outreach destination in Hightouch but failed. I should reach out to them and ask them, hey, what did you want to use outreach for? And that email is going to be so much more interesting for that person to respond to than like, hey, I'm a sales rep at Hightouch. I want to meet.
mhm.
Because it shows that you've done your diligence.
Yep.
But instead of having to do that diligence manually, that information is surfaced up to you in
Yeah,
real
and you're
time.
not putting the onus on the customer to explain themselves and tell you their whole history
Yeah.
before you start solving their problems.
Yeah. So we use it quite a bit. And like the other example I'll give you is our onboarding emails. So you create a Hightouch account. If you don't do anything in that account within 24 hours, then we'll automate an email that's sent to you talking about like how to set up Hightouch.
Uh-huh.
And if you create a source in Hightouch but not destination, we'll email you about that. We'll say, hey, great job. You set up a Snowflake source. Here are some destinations you can use. And so based on every user action someone does take, followed by not taking the next action, we will personalize that email to you and say, here's what you should do next. And if you're a second or third or fourth user in a workspace, we'll welcome you and we'll say, hey, here's who's already in your workspace by name. Here's the stuff they've already set up. And here's how they're using Hightouch today. So on your very first login, in like minutes, you'll get an email that fully describes the setup today of how your Hightouch workspace is set up.
So cool. I want to live in this world where I have that level of insight into what my customers are doing at all times. I also was curious. So another thing that we've seen pop up over the last several years, and I think LinkedIn just came out with this again, that the revenue operations titles are the fastest growing titles on LinkedIn again for like third or fourth year running.
I saw that, yeah.
How does that change how Hightouch goes to market? Because I assume that they're involved in the deal and maybe your primary buyer.
Mhm.
How has that changed how you guys sell what you do over the past few years?
Well, okay, so Rev Ops has been increasing as a field, but additionally, Rev Ops folks have been getting more and more technical over time. Like a lot of Rev Ops folks we talk to write their own SQL queries and interact directly with their database,
Right.
which is incredible because you see the title revenue operations, but under the hood, this person is actually a data person. They're doing data analysis. They're like building their own data models. So long story short is Hightouch has built, we built our business in a way that sells like to both technical and non-technical users. We kind of serve both of them pretty equally. But in a company where like sales is the use case, where they want to get data into Salesforce or Outreach, we do oftentimes work directly with the RevOps team. And then they'll go get budget from their CRO or like someone on the sales side.
Got it.
And
That was my next question, is like who ends up paying for it?
yeah, and it just depends.
Yeah.
Like some implementations of Hightouch are pretty light. They're like very affordable and fast. Other ones, they'll start with a Salesforce use case, but it'll spiral into like Zendesk, Outreach, ads, everything else. And then it'll usually become a bigger budget item. So it's a free self-serve product online. Anyone can try it like in under 10 minutes, get it set up and working.
Did you set out to go to market with a product-led growth motion, or was that something that you stumbled upon kind of organically as you grew the company?
It was. So we were very intentional about building an inbound driven business. It was not a requirement that it be product led versus like people come inbound to us and then ask us to like use it. So the
Why
reason we
was
were
that?
able to,
Why were you so intent on building an inbound business?
we just couldn't imagine building a business that would grow fast enough otherwise.
Yeah.
In the early days, right? Of course, like at a later stage, we might be able to build a business that's outbound and we can still grow as quickly, but you need a lot of cash to do that. To
Yeah.
hire sales reps, outbound sales reps, like there's so much more process you need in place to go outbound. So in the early days, our selection criteria was like, let's build something that people come to us asking us for. And if the product is really good, it'll be PLG. If the product has any like difficulty in onboarding, then it'll be handheld. But people should come to us. And in the beginning, like that started happening like the second half of 2020 because Snowflake was blowing up. People really wanted to use data to personalize their marketing and data to personalize their sales outreach. And we just created a couple terms that really stuck in the market. So we created this term called data activation. And people would come to us and they'll be like, hey, like, I really want to activate my data. I don't have access to my data. Can you help me get access to my data? And then for the technical users, we created this term called reverse ETL. And it's a really like odd term, but it simply just means getting data out of your database.
Mm-hmm.
And so the technical users would be like, what the hell is that? Why is there a reverse ETL?
Yeah.
And they'd always want to talk to us about it. And as soon as they learned about it, it would be like 2 to 3 months, they'd come back and they'd say, all right, I get it. I want to use it now.
I imagine the objection is like, what are you talking about? I just put all this energy and effort into getting my data lake put together.
That's
you
right.
want to take the data out?
Exactly. And that like a controversial type messaging like really stuck and people remembered it.
Yeah.
And there used to be like, I would say like 5 to 10 times more people talking about reverse ETL than people that knew about Hightouch.
Oh, that's so cool. And you actually measured that.
Well, they said that one's a guess.
Oh, okay.
But we would like check like how many people are Googling reverse ETL versus Googling Hightouch.
Yeah.
And so we would just be guessing based on stuff like that. But it was a strategy, like just get people to talk about this thing, be the number one on SEO for that thing. And that was our demand in the early days.
You know what? I love that. I had a conversation, I can't remember who I was talking to, maybe Dave Gearhart on LinkedIn, about the book Play Bigger. Great book, but I think a lot of people misinterpret it as like invent your tech category and then just tell people they should buy your like, hey, you need my, fancy term. What you've done was create a category by HubSpot did this back in the day too. Like they didn't go to market and say, hey, we have this software. It's really cool. You should buy it. They said, marketing ads are interruptive and annoying and they don't work. And there's this cool thing called inbound, right? And there's a new
Mhm.
methodology behind it. I love that that's the way you did that. That's really cool.
And it's different now, right? So now we have like almost 15 sellers. We're working primarily with enterprise customers. So our biggest customers include, I mean, on the B2B side, we have folks like Calendly, Blend, Plaid. I think we have an open opportunity with you guys as well, with Outreach,
Hey,
considering using
that's good
us.
news because
So
I'm obviously I'm fanboying over here. I'm salivating over the idea of us having it. So,
yeah,
uh,
and then we work with a bunch of B2C companies too, like Warner Music Group, GameStop, the NBA, and
wow.
a few other Fortune 500 that I can't actually name publicly. And so the business has changed a lot from 2020 when it was like highly inbound driven to now we get a little bit of both. And so we have learned a lot about selling in that time. And I think our sales org is pretty unique compared to most sales orgs.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it must be because not just because of that path from like inbound to outbounding now into the enterprise, but also because of what they have at their fingertips. Does that mean so you said you're focusing on enterprise now with the outbound sellers. Are they using what you would describe as an ABM motion, or does it look different? Is it like a different paradigm when high touch is in play?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't say yet that we've cracked anything like ABM or outbound. A lot of our enterprises are still coming to us inbound
Mm.
because they hear about this concept of using the data warehouse for marketing.
Oh,
And so
cool.
that's like the bread and
Yeah.
butter. Right? Like, what if I could use everything my data team has spent years setting up and just use that in like 10 minutes for sales and marketing? And so that's what they come to us for. And our sales are highly consultative. So like if there's any tips like I would give to like other founders or like early sellers, like it's simply that like on day one, we make all of our sellers learn the product in and out. Like I would bet you our sellers know our product as well as a PM at like any other company. And it's like a
That
requirement. Like people will like know about that in the interview and either they get scared off or they're like fucking excited and they join
yeah.
because they want to learn it in and out.
Yeah, you want the people that are excited for
And
sure.
I've had sellers teach me features about the product.
Oh,
Like I've
that's
had
cool.
sellers give feedback to our PMs and say, hey, like, I think this UX is confusing, man. Like, can you fix this? And then like days later, they'll get an updated product. So
Wow.
there's a completely different relationship between sales and product at our company than I think what is normal,
Yeah.
where sales gives feedback to product often. And we expect that that feedback is taken and acted upon very quickly. So like a customer will request a feature, usually like 24 to 48 hours it's built. Seller will say, hey, like, can this be improved? Usually within a week or two, that will be built. So there is not like there's no ego. There's no ego with the engineering team saying, no, like you can't tell me what
Yeah.
to do. It's quite the opposite. It's actually like, please tell me the feedback that you have for the product because you're in the market, your ears on the ground, you're the best at giving feedback for the product. And so our sellers are like just like really deep in product. They understand our customer use cases and they've always been consultative. So like every single call we've ever joined for Hightouch, it's never been about like, can we make money off of this sale? The only thing we think about is, can we actually help this person? And if not, let's stop selling them our thing. Let's help them figure out how to solve their problem today. And every single one of those relationships we build in like 6 to 12 months eventually comes back and says, thanks for helping me back then. Like, I know I couldn't use Hightouch back then because I was still setting up my data warehouse, but because you helped me do that, I really trust you. And can you help me with this next thing? And there's so many customers that just bring every single problem they have to us and they'll ask us what to do. We'll help them like find a solution. And then eventually one day they'll say, hey, I need Hightouch now.
Mm.
And honestly, don't even worry about the price. Just tell me what it costs. I'll buy it. And it's because they've had that long-term relationship with us. In fact, like so many of our customers have free POCs with us where they're sending like hundreds of millions of rows of data through our product. And by the time they buy, how are you gonna have a pricing conversation about your 200 million row POC?
Yeah.
Like,
Sounds essential.
yeah, you're gonna say, hey, yeah, like
Yeah.
I need this. It's already turned on. I can't turn it off. So
Yeah.
just tell me
Right.
what it costs, right? So like it's primarily like it was all built on the foundation of like we want people to see value. And if they see value, they should pay us something proportional to that. And if they don't, they should not pay us because that would just be stupid.
There's something about it sounds like you're giving your sellers a really broad scope of ownership. And you hear people talk about the transition from founder sales to like team
Hmm.
sales as being a
Hmm.
tough transition. And I personally, they usually say that it's because of like vision. I actually think it's more about ownership and
Mm.
fear, and that sellers have a quota and they fear not hitting the quota, and they fear that they don't have the ownership to knock down the barriers that might be in their way of hitting the quota. And it sounds like you set up your teams to where, if there's a barrier, they have some ability to knock it down, especially if it's product related. They know about the product, so they can have a high degree of ownership of the conversations that they have with customers. And it sounds like you're imbuing the organization with an abundance mindset, which is like, hey, if this isn't the right time or just not the right prospect, we don't sell it. Like, of course, there's still a quota to hit, but there's other customers out there for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you hit it on the head with that last statement. Like, you can only do this in a surplus mentality.
Yeah.
There are businesses out there who only have like 100 customers they can go after.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have fear about losing those 100 customers because that's like the market size.
Yeah.
With a business like Hightouch, we are really lucky because at some point in time, everyone wants to use data for sales and marketing. It's like a truism, right? So you know that at some point in time, you can close every company in the world. And so you don't have to be scared of losing 1 or 2 accounts or like trying to sell them now versus later. People can focus on the long term.
Just earlier today, I recorded an episode with Tito Bort. Do you know Tito?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the man. And we were talking about leading with value. And I shared with him one of my favorite, I guess, frameworks for thinking about that. And I'm just curious to hear your reaction to it. I always think that the best sales motion is one where you think about the sales process as a product that your company offers. So I am here to help you, and I'm going to do it for free, and I'm going to do it so well that you want to buy the thing that makes me money.
Yeah. I really love that. I mean, Tito's actually 99% sure a customer of ours.
It doesn't surprise me at all. He's a data fiend.
Yeah. I mean, they're insane at automating outreach. Like the stuff they do is awesome.
Yeah.
I think they were one of our first outreach customers, co-customers. But I totally agree. Like, it's almost like we're taking like freemium principles from like the app days, like with like iOS apps, and using that for SaaS, right?
Yeah.
But I think the intention is a bit different, especially when like, frankly, enterprise sales sucks. Like, how many people enjoy talking to enterprise sales? Like, very few people. Like, I don't know if you've ever bought Salesforce. Like, nothing against Salesforce, but
oh my god,
process of buying Salesforce sucks. And the ability to change that and actually make that a pleasurable experience where customers feel supported and it feels like you're on the same side of the table as that customer is just very different. Like, I'll give you another example. Early days, one of our head of growth taught us this. He was like, when you're talking to a customer, do you feel like you're sitting on this side of the table and they're sitting on the opposite side? Or do you feel like you're sitting next to each other? And that mentality is completely different. And how did that translate into like our actual day-to-day operations? With people that are in POC with us or just talking to us, we have shared Slack channels. Their engineers are talking to our engineers. They're riffing and like just doing things on the fly. And people are just setting things up over Slack in real time. And God forbid, like sometimes like something breaks in our app. They'll be like, yo, like, I don't think this worked. In minutes, our engineers are responding and fixing it, and then it's working. So like, our customers really do feel like Hightouch is an extension of their product engineering team. They do feel like they have full control over improving it. And like, we sign those SLAs that say 24-hour response time, but those are just like pieces of paper. Doesn't really make a difference in how you actually act. And we've given that kind of support to like all of our customers, even ones that don't pay us yet, but we think they will. So like, the same side of the table mentality is like profuse on sales, but also on engineering and product, where like most of our customers are a Slack channel away from us, and we're a Slack channel away from them, which is just so different than like waiting for the weekly call next week.
That is awesome. You know what? I haven't done this before, but I'm really curious to our listeners. If you talk to your customers and or prospects directly in Slack, reach out and let us know. Tell me how you do it and why you do it. I just want to hear about it. Maybe we'll turn it into an article or something, or have you on the podcast. But you can reach us at, I think it's podcast@saleshacker.com.
Yeah, and I'm happy to share more there as well. Like,
that'd be cool.
A bunch of founders reach out to us because we're known for doing this. Like, I think the word has kind of gotten out, and people will ask me like, hey, you have 350 customers now paying. How do you do this? Like, how does this scale? And they don't even realize that we do this for a lot of our free customers too.
It's incredible. what is the answer? How does it scale? Like, I mean, it's, to me, the answer is probably it doesn't, but that's kind of why it's worth it.
Yeah, the truth is like a couple things. So one, like we can't do it forever.
Yeah.
In the early stages of company building, it's worth it to think about how do I give my customers such a great experience that they keep coming back and they keep referring more customers. So that's what we did. In long term, we definitely won't be able to offer this to free users, potentially not even self-serve users. And that's just the name of the game. But on the other hand, our head of like post sales, Ju Haley, he like really built a good process for this. And Teresa Netsby, like she runs our customer success engineering team, and she's built a lot of awesome process around this. So like our Slack forwards to Intercom, everything is done in Intercom pretty much, and it's like pretty well, like it's a pretty solid process now. So I think like because they've built a good structure around it, a really strong team around it, they are able to now like kind of scale it linearly. But in the early days, like 2021, when it was us literally on that Slack channel doing things ourselves, that was not scalable.
Yeah. Yeah. And, someday you'll reach a critical mass of customers, free and paid, where you'll have some champs out there who want to just answer other customers' questions.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't wait.
So that's really cool. I love the speed with which you guys are all moving and shaking things up. It sounds like it's just really exciting time to be over there. Do you have anything you guys want to? We have a segment in a minute that we call Maybe Good Advice. So we've got questions that people have posted in the Sales Hacker community, and we pick them. We think you're the right person to answer, but if you're not, we take the pressure off. So maybe it's good advice, maybe not. We don't make promises on behalf of our guests. But before I get there, is there anything you want to plug? Are you guys hiring? It sounds like a cool place to work. New launches coming out you want to tell people about?
Yeah, we do have some new launches coming up. I mean, the biggest thing for me is really like encouraging folks that are listening to this podcast to talk to their data teams. Like, I think it's like oftentimes like scary to be thinking, hey, like I do need data for this, but am I really going to go talk to my data team and get their help? If you have a chance, like reach out to your data team, understand how their data works, and see if they want to use Hightouch to help you out. Like it's literally a free to use online product. And the hope is you ask your data team once to set it up, and then you never have to ask them again for help with data. So that's really the goal. If that helps anyone, shoot me a ping at kashish@hightouch.com. Like would really love to hear how that went, because that's kind of like our mission. It's like bridging the gap between like people's data teams and their sales teams, or their data teams and their marketing teams. And it's surprising how often those teams don't work together day to day.
Yeah.
So it's really to reduce that friction.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. All right. It's time for Maybe Good Advice with Kashish Gupta, co-CEO and co-founder of Hightouch. Marcella, what do we have for Kashish?
Okay. First up, we have Adriana B. Thank you, Adriana. She wrote in the forum, she's trying to implement a Rev Ops process at a small scale up. And she's wondering, do you have any guides, tools, tips you'd recommend to start learning more about how to document these processes?
Oh, the old documentation question. As someone who has a background in machine learning and builds a tool that's heavily used by Rev Ops folks, I thought you might have an opinion on documentation for Rev Ops.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Assuming that it's for Rev Ops, then the documentation is probably internal facing. For us, we keep things really simple. The thing about docs is that they don't matter if no one reads them. So our simple thing is encode as much as possible into Salesforce. So instead of making it so people have to go read a separate doc in order to understand the thing, if it's encoded in Salesforce, in order to increase the deal status to stage 2 instead of stage 1, you have to fill out certain fields. That's what works best for our sellers. And then the rest is just putting it in your knowledge base. So our knowledge base is Notion. We pretty much put everything in there. That way, if you search in Notion for a specific topic, like maybe it's like deal registration for AWS, then you'll find it there. But like I would really optimize for ease of finding the thing rather than like how well it's structured or the complexity. And if you're thinking about using ML to like write the docs, I'm not super confident how well that would work unless it's like how to use an API.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. That's good advice. What else do we have, Marcella?
Okay, the next one is from Faraz Abdel. And this one, he's a leader of Rev Ops in Outreach. So shout out to Faraz. This is
Hey, Faraz.
philosophy. Whiz He's titled it Philosophy. Salesforce should sunset the leads and contacts objects and consolidate into one object called people. Leads and contacts are a nightmare to all RevOps professionals. Other CRMs have already made this shift. Thoughts on Salesforce.com following suit?
Oh, wow. Like this,
And begin.
I cannot even tell you how many people are jumping up and down behind me right now as you ask this question. Could not agree more. Leads or contacts is nonsensical. We don't use leads and contacts at Hightouch. We've like done our RevOps flow such that they are merged into one. I think it's just a contact object for everything. And like I can give you like a lot of strong reasons for why that is the right architecture. If anyone's interested in that in like how we did this, like please reach out to us. Our head of RevOps is great. Like he can definitely like help make this happen. But there's a decent amount of data plumbing necessary to start using the contacts object as both. In our app, we support like leads, we support contacts, and we support an option for lead or contact where it'll search and just check which one exists and fill the data based on which one it is. So we've built it around this kind of unfortunate architecture that Salesforce has, which is that if the user is one or the other, we'll just find out and then add their columns that way, add their traits that way. But it's still confusing to me to this day why we have both. And so if the original intent of the question was like, should we merge these things? My answer is yes. The how is quite a bit more complex, unfortunately, but like it'll keep your salespeople from going crazy. And I'm not even sure how SDRs really work out of like both being separate. So I would just say like hoping for change is tough, right? Like you can't really expect that our CRMs will change, but what you can do is change how we use them. And so instead of like hoping for a people object, I think we can just use a contact object as that people object.
Wow. That is a cool answer. Thank you so
And
much.
I'll just plug one quick thing. So
Yeah, go for it.
have this, one of our advisors, Rachel Bradley Haas. She's the one that taught me about this. She's like one of the smartest data people I've ever worked with. She used to lead Rev Ops at Heroku and was acquired into Salesforce. And like, she's the biggest believer in combining everything into contact object. She's the expert on this. So like more than likely, if you reach out to me, I will connect you to her.
All right. Shout out to Rachel if you're listening. And we know that you are. Cool. Thank you, Kashish, for being here and spending your time with me in the Sales Hacker community. It's been fun. And this is the first time you've been on the Sales Hacker podcast, I think, right?
Yeah.
We should have you back again. We're going to take some of these ideas that you've got. And I want to do more with this. I wish we had more time because I think these are things that people need to learn about. Like you mentioned, right? RevOps folks are now querying their own databases and writing SQL. You know, that's a whole lane that we didn't really go down, but I think is super important trend wise and means that, you know, salespeople might have to follow suit and start teching up their game. So anyway, I really appreciate you spending the time packed with insight and wisdom. And we'll see you around.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for checking out Sales Hacker. If you enjoyed what you learned, subscribe to the show wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or visit saleshacker.com to get access to all of the latest episodes.